I'm here to introduce the FAIR principles. I'll give it a go. Normally, it might take some more time to sink in, so don't hesitate to ask me, and I will repeat everything again and again. I have no problem with that. So just a little bit of background. So I'm working on infrastructures, and we also are in the business of combining infrastructures because none of them can do it on their own. And especially I'm involved in Elixir, where I co-lead the rare disease work package. So that's just some background, together with Ivo Good, for those who know him. And the other thing that already Leo mentioned is we're setting up this GoFair network, implementation network for rare diseases. And basically that is to combine so first of all, it's necessarily an interdisciplinary network. And it's to combine people who are interested across ERNs, who are interested in FAIR, to combine those people and have a really strong network. To be able to do this, you have to be a strong network because you have to have some authority in the field. And I think we're very nicely situated for that. So we're in the process of setting this up together with Vicky, and Leo will join. And yeah. Okay. So FAIR. I thought I start with a vision slide. So what FAIR is for, the purpose. So I put it here also in a bit of the context of what I thought would be appropriate here, is that for us the vision would be that stakeholders in Vaskern should use appropriate data from across data sources in Vaskern, but also relevant data outside of Vaskern. For basic queries, but also advanced data analysis, and then without bottlenecks and errors caused by data incompatibilities or opaque access, that the way you can access data is not transparent. So that's sort of the vision. And I put appropriate there for a reason. I've recently learned that term can be used to actually mean, for instance, data under well-defined conditions. So it doesn't mean any data. There are some limits to that, and that it can be part of FAIR. Yeah, so that would be the purpose. And then a question to you, raise hands, is who is the expert of your data, in this ERN? So is that the computer nerd, like me, in this area I'm the computer nerd, or patient or doctor? So who would vote for the nerd? It's one person, it's good, one person. Who would vote for the doctors and the patients? That's clear. I will come back to this. I'm a bit mean here, I'll come back to this. Okay, so the problem we're trying to solve with FAIR is the data siloing. I think it was mentioned already before, and this is a slide reused throughout RDConnect, for instance. I borrowed this. And now I put different expert centers in. But also, just this morning, I added the mobile apps, because I have a little worry that mobile apps are going to generate a lot of data, but they could all be silo data. So we have to be careful of that. And this situation of the siloing will just mean the data will get lost, that will be inefficient, will have errors, and will be reinventing the wheel, as Leo already mentioned a lot of times. And also, there's less time for smart use of data. So I'm leading a knowledge discovery group, computational knowledge discovery, and a typical time for a PhD student for doing a data integration experiment, basically, and the main time goes into resolving ambiguity, is about half a year. So imagine for every data set, if you multiply that, how many times. If it's not interoperable, then it happens all the time. So just think about that. And one good way to explain to introduce the FAIR principles, actually not by talking about it, but by showing this video. This has been very popular, so I'd like to just do that again.
The Personal Health Train's main goal is connecting health data to make them more usable. Personal health management requires increasing amounts of personal data, but today this information cannot easily be used because the data are produced and managed by various healthcare providers, authorities, and more by citizens themselves. These stakeholders collect and manage their data in different ways, making the data hard to find and use. Furthermore, personal medical information is very privacy sensitive. As a consequence, personal health data cannot be used easily by citizens themselves, by physicians, and by researchers. The personal health train goes to the root of this problem by building FAIR data stations. FAIR protocols ensure that data are findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. These data stations are connected by tracks, which are strictly secured and protected. FAIR data trains are constantly monitored, and only trains with the appropriate validation may enter a particular station. To secure privacy, every data station has rules. Each data owner has access to his or her secured station and can easily request and control one's personal information. In addition, the owner can set rules for who can access the data and how it may be used. Communities with common interests, like patient societies, can choose to connect and organize their information through umbrella stations. With this access, a researcher can learn, for example, which cancer patients benefit most from novel therapies such as proton therapy. Or a citizen with a specific variant in his genome can be automatically alerted when new research results, insights, or possible risks become available. In this approach, the information is accessible for research, prevention, and education without the data ever leaving the station. With the personal health train, health data becomes available whilst individuals and institutions maintain control.
I guess you can already imagine your registry or your health institute being one of those FAIR data stations. So what I want to do now, just before I do that, so the FAIR, just a little bit of history. So the FAIR movement, so to say, started in 2014. That's not too long ago, and from there it started in Leiden with a workshop with data science leaders, and it quickly caught on. So the latest, so NIH and in European Open Science Cloud, Elixir, they all follow it. But also the G20 and the G7 have it now in their official documents. So it's quite nicely adopted by everyone, at least at the highest levels. But now we have to implement it. Now I want to with you, do a little experiment where we're actually going to use, especially interoperability. So we're going to make some data interoperable to resolve a problem. So the basic notion of interoperability is here that to be able to do this. So you have your data, you have their data, and you have a question, and you want that question answered. This is also the basic requirement that many of you, I think, have. So often you explain your requirements in terms of solutions, like we need a central database, but actually this is your requirement. So we're going to do this. So the problem here is that we have 4 patients. Oh, I still need sound, by the way. We have 4 independent registries, and the question is there? This is Monica, and the question is there a treatment for Monica? And one of these patients has information associated with him or her that can actually help Monica. So maybe I can just skip this. So I have audio fragments of each of them explaining their disease, and I think you will get the notion of what happens there when I go to the next slide. So here you see the transcript of their statements. So this was Monica. Monica happens to be German, so it's a German registry. And there's Rajaram. He's Tamil, so there's a Tamil registry. And there's Annika. She's from the Faroe Islands. And there's Pietro, and he's Italian. So I'm not sure if you can actually see it in the back, what it says there, but is there anyone who already knows the solution? Annika? And what solution does she have? So what's the medicine that can treat Monica?
At least she has the same thing, right? Ring 14? Yeah.
Yeah?
So I would guess.
You would guess it's I'm happy with that. So it's a good. So Annika is the first guess that she has the treatment. Do you know what the treatment is? That's a bit hard, isn't it? So basically, we have here an interoperability problem. Yeah. So in the next stage, we're going one step by step. We're going to try to resolve this by making data interoperable. And especially focusing on the eye. So we leave aside the findability and accessibility for now. So here I put them side by side. This is an intermediate step. So the first step is to translate it to English. And now I'm curious if there's now someone who can see the solution, now that everything is in English. So I hear some whispers. Is there? Who thinks who has a solution? Yeah, and why would that be the solution for Monica?
Because of her seizures.
Yeah, so you're smart, but you can imagine that this is often not so easy, right? So especially think of that you have to do this across many registries. So with just the side step, what we see here, I colored it now, that's the semantics. Leo mentioned, or I think someone mentioned syntax and semantics, so this is the semantics. We have person, disease, phenotype, treatment. That's the information we have here. So the next step is to find identifiers for those. And visually, this sort of already is a good step, because now you could see just what the smart gentleman was saying, that there is something in common between the two. I think something is missing actually here on this on this slide. Sorry about that. But there's these, for treatments, there's these codes, and they correspond. However, these codes, these identifiers, these codes are not machine readable. So for instance, HP code could be a Hewlett and Packard component number. That a computer doesn't understand this yet. So we have to do one step more. And that takes it really, it becomes geekier and geekier. We're going towards machine readability, so bear with me. Yeah, so first to make an intermediate step, because a lot of the times the information that we have in our databases are actually not complete. The semantics is not complete. And especially often the relations are missing. So here I've added the relations. So it's Monica has disease, ring 14 disease, and has phenotype, salam seizures. And then we have a much more complete picture. So the next step is to translate this human readable semantics into machine readable semantics. And that will look like this. So it doesn't look readable anymore, human readable anymore. But this is computer readable. And now everything here is no longer ambiguous. It's very explicit, very unambiguous. And we can start using this. So we can make little graphs of this. It's a nicer visualization. So we see the information of Monica, but now in this graph form, and I've added, just for our readability, I've added the human terms again. So this is the information of Monica, where she has ring 14 disease and a particular phenotype. And then we have Annika, we have Rajaram, and we have Pietro. All their information in this computer readable form. So just to have a look again at the 4 registries. So what we now have, the starting point was 4 independent, incompatible data sources that were not findable, not accessible, not interoperable or reusable. And now we have 4 still independent but interoperable data sources. The data that they have are now interoperable. And I will show you how that works and how we can use them. And because what we now have is that the data at each source is self-explaining. The meaning of the data is in that graph, readable for computers. And the way you could look at this is like a a little cloud. So we have a virtual database. If you put this all together, you would have one virtual database. And in implementation, you can choose. Either you really make a physical database where you put that interoperable data together, or you can actually run, like this personal health train, run little trains along these 4 registries. That's a choice. And how can we use this cloud? So this was the information of Monica. And now we're putting things together. So this is the information of Annika. And just simply because we use the same identifiers from the same ontologies, there's the word ontology for you, these things get linked because it's the same disease, so the same code, there's a link there. No medicine yet here. You can also look at the one of Pietro, and then we see that there's no connection between the graph of Pietro and that of Monica or Annika. So Pietro won't provide the solution. He had a medicine, but no solution. Now we put Rajaram in the mix, the machine readable information of Rajaram, and now things start nicely to connect up because Rajaram had a phenotype for which there was a particular treatment, and that happens to be the same phenotype that Monica had. So we could say this is a candidate treatment for, obviously it's very simplified, and it's also mock data, so don't follow this, but just for the principle, you can see that now Rajaram has a potential solution for Monica. And this is the principle of data interoperability. We made it interoperable, and because of that, we can do this. And now we did it on a very small example, but imagine that we do this with lots of registries, and imagine that we combine that with other data, like chemical data that has gone through the same process. So in that sense, also what Leo said was not entirely true. There is interoperable data out there. It's mostly molecular data, like chemical data, and the European Bioinformatics Institute has lots of interoperable data this way. Protein data, UniProt, is completely available in this way. Just registry data is not yet. So this helped us to solve it. So Lamar3 gene is the one that we were looking for, and we can put that in a table as a results table. And this is the graph depiction of that. And one interesting question that I can ask you, how much of this information is sensitive? I see nodding no. So this is not really sensitive at all, is it? Yeah?
It doesn't say whether he responded to whether it was effective.
Yeah, that's the simplification here.
Yeah, but we do need that feedback from it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why you should make your data sources as complete as possible, and so that we have it correctly in these graphs. Because you can also imagine that if people are sloppy about their data, then you can produce wrong results.
This is a simple example, but who is going to write the prescription, and who has the responsibility of side effects for Monica?
Yes. So again, this is a mock example. So I deliberately mentioned here candidate treatment. So then the validation should come afterwards.
Yeah, but the next thing is that Monica is sitting in the consultation, and she wants this treatment because she knows that, now I forgot his name, Perry had it. Someone had it. And then the doctor is sitting there, well, what can I do? And now this is a simple example, and everyone here is sitting and thinking, why didn't Monica's doctor try Lamar3 anyway? But that's another issue. So it could be another medicamentation which is much more rare, and someone has to write that prescription, and that one is going to be responsible for side effects. That's not my. I'm not a clinician, so that's not my field. But I suppose that would happen. Yeah, that's not. That's just. I guess that's normal procedure when something new comes on, that you have to do these kind of things, right? It's not that necessarily specific for this. Now you have the EU telling patients that they should demand something. Somehow.
No. I think, even now we actually have patients coming to us with
Yeah.
Google printouts trying to say, well, this is the treatment that this person has responded to. I think that's not, I think it's, we can search information is what he's saying, we can connect information and probably make theories, I think is what he's trying to say, rather than actually that, you know, we would be starting treatment on the basis of this.
Yeah.
I mean, let's stop the discussion. I mean, this is just an example of how it works.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So just to summarize, so I mentioned that we had data at each source is self-explaining through global standards, and it's in a way that the computers can understand. What I didn't elaborate on is these fair data points, which is for the communication between data sources. So the few geeks here in the room will be very interested in that part, but I didn't elaborate on that. That is the access to the data and how you can deal with that. And the other thing you can do then, if you have this kind of situation, and we did a proof of concept in one of our European projects, you can build applications on top of that. Any kind of applications you can build on top of that. This is one example where we linked biobank sample information to patient information to find the right samples for research, just as a demonstrator. So my final slides are also a little bit of a bridge to tomorrow's workshop, but also to make you think a little bit about this. That is a proposal that I think as a group, as an ERN, to define your strategy on if you want to make your data findable, accessible, interoperable and reusable, how to go about that. And I would want to start with this question again. So we just answered, so who is the expert of your data? And there was a clear preference for the patient and the doctor. So then, who should make the data fair? So may I ask this again? Is that the nerd?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or do I? I think I already heard that I didn't understand. I was thinking of a nasty word. I didn't understand really much about this clinical stuff, right? But I'm the nerd. So should it be me, or should it be the medical doctor? Yeah, who thinks the medical doctor or patient? So I didn't. There were a lot of hands not raised. Is there a third option?
So I think this is a problem because what we were saying earlier was we didn't want to have mandatory data entry for the patient's demonstrations that we were doing at lunchtime because it was going to take us all too long. So we would then, we were saying that we don't have time to enter all the data fields, so we don't want mandatory data entry, and yet you've shown us a clear example of how without full data entry, we have only a fraction of the potential benefit from the entire data set. So we really want the full data. So I would suggest it's neither of those, and the third option is somebody in the middle who is specifically employed to do this, maybe through a grant.
Yeah, I'm very happy that you got to that conclusion. Thank you very much. So this is what we put in the middle. So we're working on guidelines and protocols, tooling, training, but to me the most important one is what we call the data stewards, the people who live in the middle. And I really hope that at healthcare institutes, basically everywhere, people will start hiring and training data stewards. And this can also be, in many cases it is, a person who is already there, but has an interest in this and can adopt and get trained on being the in-between person. Yeah, so that's an important part for me. And then I think this is my final slide. So this is a proposed strategy. So I like the idea that by this we are strengthening our sources, and this will actually help central IT systems as well, because I fear that these central systems can easily fail if they try to do too much. So we have to help them by actually strengthening our sources. And then, so the thing would be to organize this fair data stewardship, both local, national, and international, because these are also the people who, for you, are the ones who are interacting with these international, with the ontology people, and it's those people who are in touch with them. And then So I think Leo likes this, do it. And I added, while contributing to infrastructure development. So we like developing infrastructure by example, by going through the process with end users. So the early examples would be like prototypical and demonstrations, but eventually you get to the tooling that you need. And that also involves defining the coding that you need for your data, or the data that you need. And the access mechanisms that are appropriate for your domain and that are safe enough. And the other suggestion is to start with a minimal data set, but I think it was very nice to see that lively discussion about the minimal data set, that it stirs up so much. So we can complement it, and I like the idea that you complement it by defining questions that you would like to be able to answer, and have that as the starting point. And then you can see what of the minimal data elements are useful for that, but maybe there are some missing for your ERN. And then we can still make them fair and help try to solve your answers.
I like the idea very much. As you are probably aware, it's very much like the multi-center pulmonary hypertension database we have in the Netherlands with different centers. But also it means a lot of work because, for example, in my HST database I have around 1,500 patients with certain diagnosis and a few hundred with possible. And other centers have the same amounts, even more, France has more. So it's a lot of work to pull out the data from that database and put it in a new database. It really is a lot of work, but I think it's good to start. And the longer we wait, the more work it will be.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a couple of things I can say about that. So the first thing, maybe I should start with the sad observation, is that if data was not made interoperable, then you cannot go around work, because it just wasn't made interoperable. So however you do it, if you for instance, if you have to re-enter it in a new database, or go through a verification process for which we have protocols, it's work, it's unavoidable. If you do something new, we're working also with software, registry software providers. We're trying to lower that burden by putting it in software for new data. The good news is perhaps that the way we want to, and we are developing this, is they're complementary services to what you already have. So in some cases, I think I talked to some of you here, and that's very unfortunate, but a lot of systems used in healthcare providers have a very serious vendor lock-in problem. Yeah, we call it vendor lock-in. So you're stuck with one vendor, and all your data is in that system. You can't get it out. It's all in their format. It's not interoperable with anyone, and that's just a problem. Yeah. But in principle, but if you have systems that are a little bit more flexible, or in some cases in my hospital, they worked on this quite early, that they made a sort of secondary database that is usable, and then you can put these services next to your existing services. There's still some conversion work involved, but at least you don't have to have a completely new system or something. That's really not necessary. They're all lightweight services.
I don't know if my question is a naive one, but can you give us an idea of the magnitude of this intervention? That is, for example, put the case of a database including 1,000 patients with an average of 10 to 20 entries for every patient. How many hours and how much it costs to do that?
You have to think in months. That's we estimated between, it depends on the complexity of the source, but we estimated between 40 and 80,000 euros to do it. But what helps, you saw at the very beginning, you saw this slide with all these infrastructures. So we are able to, at this time at least, as long as we have funding from these infrastructures, to do some based on that infrastructure, and also part of that is in kind. So if you are interested in training your own data steward, then that would be an in-kind contribution. So it would just be part of the work of that person. So there's ways to make that less of a pain, but some pain is definitely involved, as I mentioned. But maybe I think I forgot about this. So this is the situation at the LUMC, because it's not that that we're doing that it's all fantastic already, but the LUMC is making an effort, and we actually have quite some nice things going on. So we have some fair data stewards, and at the LUMC, there's actually the library people are really eager to learn about this technology because they want to be the data stewards of the LUMC. They want to know this stuff with ontologies and such. They see data as their next big thing. But we also have we pull basically funding from all sorts of projects to be able to do this. It's not just LUMC. And then we have the IT people, and they interact and they really contribute to a fair engineering team. So part of their time is at the LUMC, the other part of their time is with the engineers to make sure we have the services that we need. And at the top you see Barend. He's conquering the world. He is the guy who started this all. Yeah, and you see that the things we do. So there's people supporting fair data management plans. So people can come to, especially Petra, and she will help them write the data management plan, and then we put budget in for verification in the data management plan of a grant. We've done that twice now, requiring fair data principles. So there's a data management system for clinical research data, and the one who won that tender just has to do fair. And the same for a laboratory notebook. There's also some structural financing from the LUMC for this. And I mentioned the librarians and the contribution to those I already mentioned.
So this is very, very exciting, but the element that was your example, it's been picked up already, and I don't know whether we've got the coding for, is the responses to treatment. So when I've been involved with developing HPO terminologies for HHT, one of the diseases in Vascon, and when I went to ask, well, how do we code for this person did respond to this treatment in a good way, this person did not, or this person over-responded, there were no, this was within HPO, there were no terms to use the serial progression. It was all a description of a single time point. Have you got terminology that would allow us to do that, to sort of capture treatment and then effect with a second, with a time point, so that you haven't just got the single data point, you've got the response to treatment?
Yeah. So typically I would say yes. So people tend to go for the one or two ontologies that they know, like the Ordo and HPO, which is perfect. By the way, you should really, that's really a good first step. But there are so many ontologies. There are so many people doing the ontology work that by default we first look at what other people have done in terms of ontologies, and only when we really need to, we talk to an ontologist and we can extend the ontologies with the terms we need. But most of the time, there is an ontology that has those terms or is close to those terms that we can work with. You're nodding.
No, I'm shaking my head. There isn't. I've spoken to the HPO developer. So, for instance, just to explain, the question was about when people become anemic and they respond to iron. Do they respond well or do they not? That's an important assessment for us, because that will give us information. And there is a code for anemia. There's no code for treatment, and there's certainly no code for the difference between the start and end of treatment. And the HPO team relocated. They were not in the least bit interested in developing it, while they were happy to develop.
The question is this a phenotype, or are these a bunch of observations?
No, I would say it's a phenotype, but that's where the phenotypes are heading to be able to use here, because we don't just want to say phenotype X goes with genotype Y. We're already doing that. We want to be cleverer than that and say phenotype X and treatment Y.
So we typically can be, I guess we are out of time, right?
But to answer the question, then
maybe we can take this up tomorrow at the workshop.
The patients are waiting for the room, so I think we have to leave them a room. But you have been able to let us awake
I think
at this time, which is a performance. So thank you very much.